welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Caro. I am officially a printmaker, but also a painter and a bio art artist from Peru, based in upstate New York. And on today's video, I'm very excited to share with you a sketchbook tour. This is the biggest sketchbook that I've ever completed up until today. It's a 8.5 by 12-inch sketchbook, and I started this one at the end of 2018. Today is March 12th, March 13, either 12th or 13 of 2022. So it's been a good chunk of years since I started working on this one. And I'm very proud of myself because the type of sketchbooks that I usually work on are way smaller. This is a 5.5 by 5.5 inch sketchbook, and this one is a 5.5 by 3 inch sketchbook, I believe. I just measured them and I already forgot. But yeah, I'm used to using teeny tiny sketchbooks, so this is the biggest one that I've worked up until today. That sound back there is the heater. But yeah, this is a watercolor paper sketchbook. It's a sketchbook by Arteza. This was actually a gift by the brand, and it's not for my personal taste because some of the pages have a lot of texture and some of them don't. And it's not even like two with texture, one without it. It just seems to be very random. You know, I worked from beginning to end on this one because I already had it with me. I wouldn't be buying the sketchbook in the future, even though, you know, if you already have it, work with what you have. That's the way that I roll. And on the sketchbook there is a bunch of painting, there is a bunch of drawing, but it's mostly painting. And yeah, I'm just very excited to share the sketchbook with you. For this sketchbook, I've worked almost in all pages just on one side of them, so then I can sell the individual paintings at some point. So I thought it just might be smart to work on one side and leave the other side empty. This is a 30-page sketchbook, so there's 30 drawings and paintings on here. I mainly work with watercolors, gouache, and isograph pens, which are just a type of refillable pen that I use with Black India ink. And that's pretty much it. If you're new to my work, you'll see that I work with the most amount of details that I can on each teeny tiny part of each painting. That's why it took me forever to work on it, but it's been such a beautiful practice, and I'm very excited to soon get a new sketchbook and start working on it. So enough talking, let's get into the tour. ¿Está prendido el micrófono? Get right into it. This is this beautiful canvas cover, which I really like, and I decided to start working on the first page. All of this here are both gouache for the background and watercolors, and here are my fingers for size proportion. As you can see, I use the tiniest brushes that I've been able to find, which are 20 on 0, which are the smallest ones. This one was a very fun one to do, as I ended up doing dots inside the circles, and I went as deep as I could. But yeah, this was a fun one. And then right next to it, I just worked on this background. No real objective whatsoever. The idea was just to work on pretty much getting the ambience of the new palette that I was starting to work at the time. I feel these are both from the end of 2018. And this is when my work palette became way pastel than it used to be back in the day. This one here was pretty much another study, very similar to the one I just showed you, but this time around I wanted to play with only golden drawing ink. This is an ink that I love by Winsor & Newton. And then the other one is just white drawing ink on a azul acero. And whenever I decide to work on these, this is pretty much myself trying to get back on the practice of painting. The objective is not to do a masterpiece whatsoever. It's more than anything just getting used to the palette, to working with my brushes. Again, sometimes I get doubtful and I feel I'm a little blocked, so this is the first step that I usually take to unblock myself. Just starting to work on a flow of dots and eyes. Those are like the signatures in my drawings, dots and eyes and circles everywhere. And this is just that flow, the flow that gets me back in my own flow. These I'm very happy with. This was a painting that I worked on in 2019, so we are already in 2019. And here I just wanted to play around. I feel that having a sketchbook practice has become just the opportunity to start playing again. In the middle I have watercolors, and here's some play with gouache. As you can see, I'm also repeating the dots inside circles. And here I actually started playing with colored pencils, which, if you know my work, I am not used to using at all. But this was super fun. All the purple out here are these like purple rays made with colored pencils, which I'm not used to using, so it was pretty fun. I also used some colored pencils out here. And I love that it's very subtle, but you can still see the difference from the blue to the purple. And here you can see why I love that gold ink from Winsor & Newton. I love how it actually shimmers and it changes the way it looks depending on where the sun is and how the sun is reflecting on your paper. And here I loved working with that contrast in between watercolors and gouache. All of these lighter rays are watercolor. I first work on the watercolor and then I added the blue background with gouache, and the same with this black background that's also gouache. This is a study I did on orchids, and this is part of the nights that I was spending 2 hours each night doing some sketches. And as you can see, I first worked on pencil and then did the India ink outline. I feel these two are my favorites. This one right here and this one up here. Orchids are such alien looking flowers. They look like yonis from space. So what do we have next? So before I continue with the sketchbook tour, I want to take a few seconds of the video to thank today's video sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is the virtual home of my website, my art portfolio, and my online shop. I've been using Squarespace since 2018 and I couldn't recommend them enough. With Squarespace, it's super easy to display your work with their professional portfolio designs, and I also love their automatic image scaling as they ensure my art always looks right. Their online store tools are great to sell your digital or physical art, and it is super easy to link your portfolio to the actual shop. If you haven't checked out Squarespace and are looking to take your business to the next level, you can try them for free for 2 weeks and then use the code Caro Arevalo to get a sweet discount when purchasing your first website or domain. Thanks again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. And now let's go back to our sketchbook tour. So this is actually the last one that I've worked on this sketchbook. I see it finished for now. Maybe in the future I'll want to add some more details to it. And this is gouache and watercolor as per usual. We have some gouache with golds in the middle. This turquoise layer is watercolors, as well as these 4 circles or watercolors. The coral-ish orbit is also watercolors, and these 4 moon planets watercolors, and then all the rest is gouache mixed with watercolors, gouache by itself, and gouache with drawing ink. I feel this is like a dream world mandala. And up next we have some more plant studies. These are studies from wild plants, wild flowers from the United States. And this painting is watercolors and drawing ink for each plant, and then the background is gouache. This is actually one of the first studies where I didn't do India ink line work on top. And to the right we also have another study, but this one I didn't paint it, it just stayed on pencil. So after working on the line work here, I scanned this one here and I did some digital painting. There we go. And this is a postcard that I did for our March rewards for my Patreons. Next, we have one of the first mushroom studies that I ever did. These I actually did in 2020 when I was starting to work on my painting on the evolution of fungi. So something that I sometimes love to do is to first work on my sketchbook, get to know the palette, the shapes, and once I feel confident about it, I will go into the actual painting itself. Here we have pink oyster mushrooms. We have psilocybin cubensis mushrooms. We have, I believe, trumpet mushrooms, and I don't remember the names of these other friends, but I can look it up for you. And next we have my second fungi study. This one is a study that I did using my new natural pigment watercolors. These I got back in 2020. They are from Case for Making, and the first time that I wanted to work with them was using this subject that I was currently working on, which is fungi. So, you know, here we have a lichen, some false morel, truffles, penicillium, this is also penicillium, and some other cool ones which I don't remember, but all of these are part of the Ascomycota division of the fungi kingdom. Next we have a study of 4 different veggies and mushrooms from my fridge. This is India ink pen study that I did back in 2020. To the left we have an artichoke, a kiwi dissection, a white mushroom, and a lemon. And the idea behind the study was to, you know, play around with some species that it's easy to find at home. The invitation was to just play around with what I had on my fridge and do some studies with just line work to work on the shadows, the lights, and how to make different textures within pretty much the same pen. And this was pretty fun just to, you know, get back into drawing, especially after a time not working. I feel this is one of the best ways that I love to get back into my creative practice. Right up next, I have these study from some dried plants that I had with me at home. And for this one, I actually wanted to try out some new drawing inks that I got. Let me show you which ones. Back in 2020, I was pretty interested in trying these around. They are ethically foraged, and I thought it would be a great way to get into, I've been in this sustainability route, trying to make as sustainable as possible my art practice, which if you're an artist, you may know it's not the simplest thing. So here we have a bougainvillea. I don't really know the name of this one right here. Some leaves that I've collected throughout the time. This was a small rose that I got back home in Peru. This up here is another bougainvillea. And I was just playing around, trying these new artist inks, and then doing some India ink outline, black India ink outline on top. And here I started playing with those inks, but also mixing them with my watercolors as well as with my white drawing ink. So here I have a poppy. This is like the poppy seed container. This actually sounds like a little rattle. And then these other leaves that I got, I believe this is a croton leaf. I got this one from Peru, and this one I don't really know where it came from, but I had it dried. Up next we have this painting, which is a gouache, watercolor, and stamps painting, which I started in 2020 and I finished in 2021. This one was part of my online course, Rituals Around Creativity. This is a painting that I did based on a visualization journey that Vivian Arias guides us on in Rituals Around Creativity. This is my online course, which is focused on creative activities as well as different rituals in order to awaken the artist within. And Viv guided us in this beautiful visualization. This is what I came up with, and this is the painting that I did based on the visualization. So in the middle we have this sun of some sort. I drew this one with gouache as well as dried gouache. I have some sparkly dry gouache. This is like a gold dry gouache. Have a chug of water every time I say gouache. I've said gouache like 30 times on the last sentence. And this sort of pastel rainbow that I did on top. I painted the background with gouache. Then all these planets are made with watercolors as well with the gold dry gouache. And yeah, I did a woman, which I actually finished digitally, and I struggled a lot doing this panther here, so I actually gave up in the physical version, but I did a panther that I really ended up liking digitally, working on Procreate. And yeah, this is what I came up for that visualization. It was a fun one. I love working on two spreads from my sketchbook in order to make something big, and then digitally, I work on the separation and the stitches, and I just pretty much correct all these things so then I can make nice prints out of it without having these big division. So next we have this one, which I finished earlier this year. This is a study of the moons from our solar system, and this one I did just based on a infographic that I found by National Geographic, sharing all the moons that the planets in our solar system have. Here is our moon, planet Earth moon. I always cook my colors. I never grab a gouache tube and just put it. I always mix them up and make them my own. So this one to the left is watercolors with India ink on top. And this is such a tricky flower. It's super intricate, and this is the first time that I ever tried it. These just watercolor and India ink on top. They have this beautiful curly stem thingies, and I feel that it's such an intricate flower that This was the first attempt, and I am sure that I will be working on more passion flowers throughout time to get closer to how they actually look. And then this one towards the right is a study from some dried plants that I had at home. I have Bugambilia, and of course I don't remember the names of the others. You may remember that I did a study of this one a couple pages ago. See, it's up here. It's this one here. Anyhow, this was just a fun study on some dried plants that I had at home. This was a Draw With Me tutorial I filmed for my online course, Rituales para Crear. Here we have a mandalic flow. These one actually are now available at my art shop as prints. And hopefully by the time that I release the video, the originals will also be available. All of these ones here are mainly just watercolors. All the artwork on top of the purple here is watercolor mixed with drawing ink, and the middle, the second orbit here is also watercolor, and the rest is gouache. And here I was doing some experiments with starting with tiny dots and going bigger, and also I start with more of an orange color with the smallest dots, and I start going towards yellow and white while the circles go out. This one, I was actually working on this one in the jungle in Peru when my partner and I went to visit my dad, and then we also went to have some plant medicine ceremonies. I remember the day before and after our ceremonies with grandmother, I was working on this painting here. And there's another painting in the sketchbook that was part of that trip and those ceremonies. These were not like visualizations from that plant journey, but they were just inspired from them. I love working on the most intricate things. I could even add more to these ones. So sometimes the trickiest part of painting for me is when to stop. You know, I could even add some black ink here or more details here, dots inside the circles, but sometimes it's just time to let it go. All right. Throughout the sketchbook, you'll see that this is pretty much just my safe space where I like to keep it playful and as free as I want. Let's say this one here is super intricate. It's a whole painting within itself. This was more of, I'm a little stuck, why don't I just work on something like a fern and just, you know, this was very fast. This was like 30 minutes working on this one, while on the other hand, working on the one I just showed you might have been months. So next we have these two. This one is the other one I was telling you that I worked on in Tarapoto back in January 2020, visiting my dad and working with grandmother, plant medicine. These I worked on the days right after our ceremonies. And this doesn't look as what I was seeing in my journey, but it's the closest that I could get to it. And this one here is both gouache and watercolor. So in the center we have all gouache, and then all of these planets out here are watercolors. I feel this one is not yet quite finished, but it's getting there. Here I wanted to work on some rainbow scheme, rainbow color lines, and of course all of these white ones are still in progress, but I just couldn't wait to make this video. This was a very fun one. It might be one of the first time that I'm making an eye with an actual eyelid. I usually just work on a 2D eye like these ones here. But this was the first time that I did that eyelid on top, and I was very called to working on this pastelish palette. And right next to it we have studies on the ocotillo plant. So this one here is studies of ocotillo. Ocotillo is a plant that grows in the desert, and to the left we have the actual whole ocotillo plant. A human being would be maybe around this size, probably. Ocotillos are huge, and I worked on this one with gouache. All of it is gouache. So if you can see, the ocotillo grows green, and then the last part of it is this grayish color with thorns. That's this right here. And then I worked on a little study of the leaves with the thorns, and here of the flowers. They are tiny flowers that grow on top of the ocotillo. I actually love how these two look together. I feel the colors pair very good together. So the next one here is a study that I did for a Draw With Me class for Patreon. So this was an exclusive Draw With Me for my Patreons, and I worked on a few different plants. This one here is lotus. It's a dried lotus flower. Here we have amaranthus. It's a dried preserved amaranthus. And up here we have different ones, different plants, which I don't remember their names right now. But yeah, it was just a Draw With Me class on different ways we can work on plants, making plant studies and different techniques, not only for lights and shadows, but also the different ways we can, start relating one to the other, and also comparing the sizes and what tools we can use to measure and whatnot. And up here, this is also one of the last paintings, this one, that I did on my sketchbook. So to the left we have these fun painting that I did on my Patreon. We have this art challenge. It's a monthly art challenge, so each month we have a theme, and whoever wants to join can join us in painting or drawing or creating something related to that theme. And February's theme was doing a self-portrait. So I actually have this painting from myself in this shape. I'm doing yoga. I'll try to put it here somewhere. And I just pretty much used that drawing that I did years ago to just pretty much copy the outline of my body. I still had my long hair, and I decided to do pretty much like an ocean legs and ocean themed things down here. So I have the corals, some seashells, some stars, sea stars. So this was just like my first approach towards making landscapes and beings inside a human body. It was pretty fun, and it's something that I want to try around, maybe in the future. And then to the right, we have studies of the cacao plant. Mama cacao. So I did these studies back in January of 2021. This is the cacao tree roots. We have the cacao flowers. Have a chug of water every time I say cacao. We have 2 cacao pots up here, 2 different colors depending on the type of cacao tree that one has. It has different colors of pots. There's more orangey, brownish, red, green. The flowers are actually this size, like 0.01 inch. They're teeny tiny. So yes, cacao studies forever in my sketchbook. Up next, we have the last page on my sketchbook. This is so different from everything you've seen in my sketchbook before. So this here is a collage, and this was part of a class that I taught in my online course, Rituales para Crear. This is for the Spanish version of my online course. And we were doing an activity on working with new tools. So I never do collage, but I still wanted to work on something related to the themes that my artwork is usually related to. So plants, mushrooms, mandalas, sacred geometry, and this is what I came up with. I love these like 4 eyes in the corners, and I always love trying out a new tool, different from the one that I usually use, but it's beautiful to see how our essence can still be there in a new language. So it's different, but at the same time keeps the essence, you know? We've come to the end, my friends. So that is everything for today's sketchbook tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for spending your time with me. Thank you for being here. And thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. You can use the code Caro Arevalo if you want to try them out and get a sweet discount. Thank you as well to my Patreons for supporting my work. If you are interested in seeing more of what I do, maybe not sketchbook tours, because as you know, I take like 4 years to finish one, but other art related videos, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also post stuff on Instagram, sometimes on TikTok, sometimes on Minds. I'm also on Patreon, as I just shared. I recently also opened a newsletter, which you can find out more on my website. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and that this video inspired you a little, maybe to get some art going, maybe to start painting a little. And yeah, that's everything for today. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you sometime soon.